I stepped through the front door and just froze. There she was, standing in the driveway like she owned it. My wife, Ashley. Tight jeans she hadn't touched in months, and that smug little grin? Yeah, it had no place in a real marriage. But that wasn't even the part that punched me in the gut. No, what really hit me was the guy leaning against a shiny new black Escalade, looking like he just stepped out of a commercial. I didn't recognize him. Tall, tan, hair so perfect it had to be fake. One of his arms was slung casually around two kids, both old enough to know what betrayal looks like. And just behind them, my son, Caleb, stood frozen in the doorway, eyes wide, confused. Ashley didn't give me a chance to say a word. She flipped her bleach blonde hair over her shoulder and said, "Ryan, meet Derek and his boys. They'll be staying with us for a while. I think it's time we stop pretending." I let out a laugh, but not the kind that comes from your belly. This one was jagged, broken, more pain than humor. Pretending what, exactly? I asked. She walked right by me like I wasn't even there. Derek followed close behind, the kids trailing, dragging suitcases like this was already their home. "You and I," she said, dropping her purse on the couch without a care. "We've been over for a long time. You were just too blind to see it." Caleb stepped beside me then. I felt a small hand wrap around my arm, trembling. "Dad, why is he here?" Ashley glanced over her shoulder with a smirk that made my blood boil. "Because he's the one keeping me warm now." That sentence didn't just sting, it lit a fire in my chest. The warning signs had been there. The late nights, the sudden obsession with working out, the new lingerie she never wore for me. The way she smirked at her phone like it was whispering dirty jokes only she got to hear. But I was a fool. I convinced myself it was just a rough patch. I thought if I stayed strong, kept providing, kept protecting, she'd come back around. Turns out, someone else was holding her close while I was in the next room, duct taping this marriage together like it was a sinking boat. "Derek's boys are sweet," she added, flashing that fake smile again. "Maybe they'll help Caleb toughen up." And that was it. That was the moment something in me cracked. But before I could speak, before I could even react, Caleb stepped forward. 11 years old, same eyes as me, but in that moment, stronger than I'd ever been. He pointed right at Ashley, voice loud enough for the whole damn street to hear. "You're not my mom anymore." For the first time since she stepped out of that SUV, Ashley looked stunned. "I saw your messages," Caleb said, voice shaky but rising. "You told Derek you wanted me gone because I remind you of Dad. You called me a burden." Derek shifted on his feet like the floor got too hot. Ashley's face drained of color, then turned red with rage. "You little brat," she snapped. "You had no right." "He had every right," I said, stepping between them. "While you were off playing house with your bargain bin boyfriend, he was watching our world fall apart, wondering why his mom stopped loving him." She shot me a look like I was something stuck to her shoe. "Oh, come on, Ryan. Don't turn this into a soap opera. You were dull. Predictable. I needed someone who made me feel alive again." "Alive," I said, looking straight at the guy who still hadn't said a word. "You mean this guy?" Derek finally opened his mouth. His voice was too smooth, like he'd been rehearsing. "Look, man, it's nothing personal. Ashley deserves to be happy." I almost laughed again, but my fists were clenched too tight to let it out. "I hope she brings you the same joy she brought me," I said coldly. "Because sooner or later, she'll turn on you too. She always does. And when that day comes, I'll be laughing." Ashley rolled her eyes and walked off toward the kitchen. "Whatever. You'll be hearing from my lawyer." She thought the conversation was over, but she had no idea I wasn't done. Not even close. Because I had one final play, one she never saw coming. And it started with a folder I'd stashed in the bedroom. Every secret she thought she'd buried? It was in there. I walked down the hall to what used to be our room, but now it was mine. Opened the top drawer of the nightstand and reached beneath some old birthday cards and tangled charger cords. There it was. A manila folder I'd been quietly filling for 3 months. I never wanted to use it. I prayed I was wrong. But I wasn't. Screenshots. Bank records. A hotel receipt from the weekend I'd been in Illinois visiting my mother. Ashley said she was sick. Turns out, she was shacking up at the Hilton with Derek. Even a few printed DMs from Derek himself, bragging to one of Ashley's friends about how he stole her from her loser husband. I had everything. Solid proof. I stepped back into the living room. Derek was kicked back on my couch, flipping channels like he paid the bills. His kids were already in the kitchen, digging through Caleb's snacks like they owned the place. Caleb sat rigid on the stairs, still quiet, still stunned, but you could see the fire in his eyes. Ashley spotted the folder in my hands and rolled her eyes. What's that? You printing out memes now? Something like that, I said. She snatched it from me, flipped it open, and just like that, the smirk was gone. You were spying on me? She barked. No, I said, staring her down. I was gathering evidence. There's a difference. And now I've got enough dirt to make sure the only thing you leave with is that bargain bin boyfriend and his snack-stealing kids. She tossed the folder onto the table, papers flying. Derek got up fast, trying to keep cool. Hey, man, he said, hands up a little. Maybe we should take this somewhere else. No, I snapped. You stepped into my house. Brought your circus into my life. You made this public, so let's keep it that way. Ashley's voice went sharp again, full of venom. You have no idea what I've been through. You were never really there for me. Emotionally, I was dead inside. You just tinkered with the sink, played Mr. Fix-It while I was falling apart. You weren't falling apart, I fired back. You were just looking for a way out. That's not the same thing. Then, out of all people, Derek reached out and tried to put a hand on my shoulder. You need to chill out, bro. The second he said, bro, something inside me snapped clean in half. I slapped his hand away and got right in his face. Say that again, I growled. See how calm I stay. He backed off real quick. Ashley, flustered now, reached for the last card she had. You think a judge is going to side with you after you've been acting aggressive in front of your son? I'm not threatening anyone, I said, my voice cold. I'm finished. That's a whole different thing. And right then, right in the middle of this dumpster fire, Caleb spoke up again. Can I stay with you, Dad? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. Ashley spun around, stunned. What? No. You're not choosing sides here. I already did, he said quietly. The second you brought them into this house like we didn't matter anymore. Derek's kids picked up on the shift in the room. One of them, probably 9 or so, leaned in and whispered something to him. Derek nodded and crouched down to listen. Ashley, meanwhile, crossed a line she couldn't erase with any custody agreement. She grabbed Caleb's arm. You're confused, she hissed. I'm your mother. You don't speak to me like that. I didn't yell. I didn't raise a fist. I just stepped forward, looked her dead in the eyes, and said, let go of my son. She froze. I'd never used that tone with her before. Cold. Final. She let go. Derek let out a shaky breath like he was finally realizing just how deep he'd waded in. Maybe we should go, he mumbled. Maybe you should have thought about that before walking into another man's house, waving your midlife crisis around like a welcome gift, I snapped. Ashley grabbed her bag, face tight with rage. This isn't over. I know, I said. It's just beginning. As they walked out, Derek's youngest gave Caleb a small wave. Caleb didn't return it. He just stared at them, locking the moment in his mind like he was burning it into memory. I shut the door, locked it, then turned to face my son. I'm sorry, I said quietly. You didn't deserve this. He stepped forward and hugged me. Tight. Like he knew I was all he had left. And right then, I realized something. I wasn't the one who lost everything. She was. And she hadn't figured it out yet. The next morning was quiet. Not peaceful, though. More like the kind of silence that hangs around your neck like a noose. That kind of hush that follows a storm, when everything's been flipped upside down and you're standing in the ruins trying to pretend it's still home. Caleb didn't go to school. I didn't push him. We just sat at the kitchen table, sipping cocoa like survivors of the same wreck. Neither of us mentioned Ashley. But I knew the questions were eating him alive. Same as they were eating me. Sometime around noon, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Your behavior last night was abusive. You're unstable. I've already spoken to a lawyer. I'll be coming by to get my things with police supervision. Do not contact me again. I read it twice, then passed the phone to Caleb. He blinked, then looked up at me. She really said you were abusive? Yeah, I nodded. After everything she's done. Liar, he muttered. That word hit hard. Simple. True. She lied like it was second nature, like breathing. Effortless, constant, shameless. But I wasn't about to let her twist this into some sob story where she played the victim. She could tell her tales to Derek, the courts, her little group chats. I had the facts. I had screenshots, documents, receipts. I had Caleb. That was enough. 2 days later, she showed up again. This time with 2 cops. No heads up, no courtesy, just knocked on the door like she hadn't torn our lives apart. She wore oversized sunglasses, a phony frown, and clutched a tote like it carried her self-respect. One officer asked, "Are you Ryan Monroe?" I nodded. The lady would like to collect some personal belongings. Will you allow us to escort her in for a short time? I looked at Ashley. You need an escort now? She smiled smug. I'm protecting myself. You should have done that before climbing into Derek's passenger seat. I shot back. The cop stepped between us. Let's keep this civil. I nodded and stepped aside. Sure. Let the guest of honor collect her thongs and fairy tales. She walked in like she still owned the place. Headed straight upstairs without even glancing at a single family photo. That stung more than I expected. I thought maybe there'd be a flicker of guilt something. But there was nothing. She was already gone. While she rummaged through the bedroom, I grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge. One of the officers lingered by the stairs, clearly uncomfortable. Then I heard her mutter loud enough for everyone to catch it. This place smells like failure. How did I survive here for so long? I closed my eyes, took a breath, let it burn. She came downstairs carrying 2 stuffed bags, clothes, makeup, and something on her wrist that looked an awful lot like my watch. I pointed right at it. That's mine. She rolled her eyes and gave a short laugh. Please. You never wore it. She lifted her chin. Well, I will now. One of the officers gave her a firm look. Ma'am, if he purchased that item, it stays. With a loud sigh, she yanked it off her wrist and tossed it onto the couch like it was garbage. Then she turned to me, chin high, and said, Derek's already talking about proposing. I just looked at her. No words. Nothing. She nodded like she was doing me a favor. Just thought you should hear it. So you can start moving on. I gave her a smile, cold as a freezer. Already have. She blinked, caught off guard. Yeah, that one landed. And right then, like some cosmic punchline, Caleb came downstairs holding something in both hands. It was a photo frame, the 3 of us on his 5th birthday. He had frosting on his nose. Ashley was kissing his cheek, and I was holding them both like they were the world. He walked up to her and handed it over. She looked confused. What's this for? Keep it, he said. So you remember what you threw away. Then he turned around and walked out the front door. One of the officers cleared his throat. That's everything, ma'am. We're done here. She didn't say another word, just followed them out, clutching that photo like it burned to the touch. I stood in the doorway and watched them disappear down the drive. And for the first time in this whole damn nightmare, I didn't feel broken. I felt clear. The mask was off. The truth was out. And what was left inside me wasn't sadness anymore. It was strength. Because I wasn't the one hiding. And soon, everybody else would see the full picture too. I still had one last move to make. And this time, I was playing for keeps. The day after she grabbed her stuff, I filed for divorce. No back and forth, no drama. Straightforward. Clean. I handed everything, photos, receipts, messages, to my lawyer like a loaded gun. He flipped through it, raised his eyebrows more than once, then looked at me and said, You've got enough here to bury her in court. Good, I said. Let her dig. I didn't tell Ashley a word. I let the papers speak for me. Served right to Derek's doorstep while she was inside, playing house with her new man and his 2 kids. I bet she smiled through it, tried to play it cool, called it just paperwork or something. But the timing? Oh, that wasn't an accident. I wanted Derek to see who he really let into his home. A woman who turned her own son into a pawn and treated her husband like a backup plan. The kind who lies so much, even she believes the fantasy after a while. 2 days later, I got a call from an unknown number. I didn't answer. Let it go to voicemail. Later, I listened. It was Derek. He sounded shaken. Quiet. Hey man, I think we should talk. Call me back when you can. I didn't. Let him sit in it. Instead, I packed up the truck, told Caleb we were going for a ride, and we headed out to the lake just outside of town. No signal. No noise. Just the water slapping the shore and birds overhead. We didn't talk much at first. An hour passed, just the sound of line casting and quiet thinking. Then, while tying on a new lure, Caleb looked up and asked, Do you think she ever loved us? I didn't sugarcoat it. I think she loved the idea of us. The version of us that worked for her. He nodded slowly. I don't miss her, he said. Me neither, I told him. Not the Ashley she is now. I miss the one who used to dance barefoot in the kitchen while burning pancakes. The one who cried when we brought you home from the hospital. That woman. She disappeared somewhere between Derek's 6-pack and her sudden allergy to family dinners. When we got home, there were flowers sitting on the porch. Cheap ones. Gas station bouquet. Still in the plastic sleeve. No note. Just silence and a last-ditch gesture. I tossed them in the trash without a second thought. Later that night, My lawyer sent over a recording. Private investigator I hired had been following Derek. Turns out, he'd already been seeing someone else. A new woman, different from Ashley. Same restaurant Ashley used to love. Same cocky grin on his face. Waitress confirmed he'd been coming in with the new girl for a month. Overlapping timelines. Looks like karma didn't waste any time. I didn't tell Ashley. Not yet. Instead, I sent her a single text. Your fairy tale's cracking. You might want to stay close to home this week. 10 minutes later, she replied. What the hell are you talking about? I didn't answer. Just left it there. 2 nights later, there was a knock at the door. Late. Around 11. Caleb was already in bed. I opened it. There she was. No Derek. No makeup. Hoodie, leggings, hair pulled back in a messy bun, but not the cute kind. The unraveling kind. Ryan, she said, trying hard to sound calm. Can we talk? I stepped out onto the porch and shut the door behind me. No. She flinched. Wasn't expecting that. It's important, she whispered. What? I asked. Derek dump you already? Her lip twitched. That one landed hard. I got the divorce papers, she said. I don't know. Maybe we rushed things. I let out a short, bitter laugh. No. You rushed. I just stood here and watched. She took a shaky breath. He's not who I thought he was. Big surprise, I said. I made mistakes, okay? Big ones. I see that now. No, I said. You didn't just make a mistake. You made a choice. Over and over. She got quiet. I don't want Caleb to hate me. Then maybe you shouldn't have paraded a stranger and his kids through his home like a circus act, I said. I didn't know what else to do, she whispered. And that's the problem, I said. You never think past the moment. Then, this part still stings, she reached out, placed her hand on my arm, and said, maybe we can fix this. For Caleb. I looked at her. Really looked. Then I stepped back. I already did, I said. I fixed everything the day you walked out. Then I turned, opened the door, and shut it right in her face. She never knocked again after that first time. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over, not by a long shot. She wasn't done, and truth be told, neither was I. 3 long days passed without a single word from her. No flowers pretending to mean something. No phone calls trying to reel me back in. Not even one of her fake, teary apologies. Then came Friday. I pulled into the driveway after work, and there it was, her car. Already parked, front tires angled like she was planning to settle in for a while. She stood in the front yard, arms folded tight across her chest, pacing in high heels that had no business being in the grass. She was dressed like she was headed to a nightclub, tight black dress, blood-red lipstick, like she was playing a part in some twisted movie. Definitely not like someone trying to mend a broken home. Our son Caleb was still at school. I figured I had about 20 minutes before the bus dropped him off. I got out of my truck and didn't say a thing. Just stared at her. She spotted me and gave one of those smiles she'd probably practiced in the mirror. Ryan, you're looking good, she said. I didn't return the compliment. Just walked right past her toward the front door. What do you want, Ashley? I asked without turning around. She trailed behind me like some stray mutt dressed in designer clothes. I spoke with Derek, she said, like we were just 2 old friends catching up. We decided it's not working out. Too many differences. The kids didn't get along. It's sad. Tragic, I muttered, unlocking the door. She didn't wait for me to invite her in. Just slid past like the last few weeks hadn't blown our lives apart. She dropped onto the couch like she still belonged there. I've been thinking, she began, smoothing out her dress like it mattered. Maybe I made a mistake. You did, I told her flat out. More than one, actually. A whole series of them. I wasn't myself, she said, using that same worn-out excuse she used when she crashed the car or maxed out our credit card. You know how lost I was. I just needed attention. I needed to feel seen. I leaned against the wall and crossed my arms. So, your answer was to cheat? To lie? To humiliate me? To bring some stranger and his kids into the house we built? To pretend we didn't matter? She opened her mouth like she had a defense ready, but I didn't let her speak. And then, I went on, you accused me of abuse. You ran to a lawyer first to make me look unstable. You told our son that he reminded you too much of me. Do I need to keep going? That practiced smile of hers finally cracked. I just want another chance, she said, voice shaking now. Not for me, for Caleb. He deserves a real family. I looked at her for a good while, not saying anything. Then I told her the truth. I've already filed for full custody. You'll get visitation. Supervised. And only until Caleb decides otherwise. She jumped to her feet, eyes burning with anger. You can't do that. I already did, I said calmly. You want to fight it? Fine. Bring your folder. I'll bring mine. Her eyes narrowed into slits. You really think that makes you the better parent? No, I said. I think staying through every lie, every breakdown, every time you locked that bedroom door because you weren't in the mood for months, I think that makes me the better parent. You were cold. You were already gone. We stood there in silence, breathing hard, like two boxers in the final round, too exhausted to land a real punch, too bitter to quit. Then I heard the sound of the school bus pulling up. I stepped out onto the porch just as Caleb hopped off, backpack half unzipped, his hair all blown to one side by the wind. He spotted her and stopped in his tracks. Mom, he said, cautiously. She gave him a sweet little smile. Hey, baby. You didn't return it. Why are you here? He asked. I just came to talk to your dad, she said, keeping her tone light. Just grown-up stuff. He turned his head toward me. I gave him a small nod. He climbed the steps and stood right next to me. Are you staying? He asked her. I was hoping to, she replied. No, he said. You shouldn't. For just a second, I saw it. Her face dropped. The fake confidence shattered, and something real crept through. Regret. Maybe even fear. But it came too late. Okay, she whispered. I'll go. She walked back to her car, her heels sinking into the lawn with each step. Just before she opened the door, she turned back. He'll regret this, she warned. One day he'll ask why I left. But Caleb spoke before I could. No, he said. I'll remember why. Then he turned and walked into the house. I followed him inside, shutting the door behind me. And for the first time in weeks, the place actually felt like my home again. Not perfect, not whole, but honest. And I'd take that over her version of love any day. The next week was mostly quiet, but not the peaceful kind. It was the kind of silence that hangs heavy, like a storm waiting to break. Then Wednesday rolled around. I was just setting the table for dinner, grilled cheese and tomato soup, Caleb's favorite, when my phone rang. It was an unknown number again. I almost ignored it, but something in my gut told me to answer. Ryan Monroe? The voice on the other end asked. Yes, I replied. This is Officer Brooks with the County Sheriff's Department. We've received a formal complaint involving you. My heart skipped. A complaint? I asked. Yes, sir. It was filed by Ms. Ashley Monroe. She's alleging potential endangerment of a minor. Claims include verbal threats, emotional abuse, and refusal to allow her access to your son. I stood there, stunned. We're not filing any charges at this time, he continued, but we will need a formal statement, preferably through your attorney. I nodded out of habit, even though he couldn't see me. I understand. I'll have my lawyer reach out. I hung up, my hand trembling. Caleb looked up from the table. Dad? What's wrong? I forced a smile. Nothing, but just some paperwork I forgot about. I did not tell him what really happened. Not yet. But inside, I was fuming. She was not done. She could not just walk away quietly. Could not admit that she broke something beyond repair. Now she was trying to make me the bad guy in the story of her own mess. The same woman who packed her bags and left with another man was now calling me a threat to my son. And that was the moment I realized she was willing to burn it all down just to avoid taking the blame. Right after dinner, I called my lawyer. I did not even have to explain, he already knew what was coming. She's feeling trapped, he said without hesitation, realizing she bet on the wrong man, and now she's trying to take the reins back any way she can. He paused, then added, the good news is, you kept records. You did everything right. Let her come at you. We are ready. That night, sleep did not come easy. I just laid there, eyes locked on the ceiling, replaying every moment we had shared. Every time she lied, every time I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I should have seen her true colors a long time ago, but I did not want to. I convinced myself she was just confused, maybe going through something, that she was lost, not malicious. But the truth? She was both. And the hardest part to swallow? She was still Caleb's mother. Then came Thursday. She showed up at his school. She had no right to. The divorce agreement spelled it out clear as day, no contact with our son without permission. But that didn't stop her. She waited until he walked out, then cornered him in the parking lot. Tried to sweet-talk him into coming with her for a few days. He told her no. She got mad. A teacher saw the whole thing. By the time I arrived, the principal had already called me, and Caleb was waiting safely in the office. Ashley? She had taken off. But security footage had enough to count as a violation. I filed it immediately. That night, She sent me a text. "You're turning my son against me. You'll regret this." "He will too." I did not answer. I just forwarded it to my lawyer. That weekend, I finally sat Caleb down on the couch. We had avoided the full conversation for too long. I did not give him the ugly details. He was still a kid, but I told him enough. "Your mom's going through something," I said. "She's been making choices I can't protect you from anymore. But I promise you this, I'll always keep you safe, no matter what happens." He gave me a nod. "I know, Dad. I see it." And then he said something I will never forget. "I used to wish she'd come back. Now, I hope she doesn't." I could not find words. My heart hurt for him, but at the same time, I felt a strange sense of relief. He saw the truth now. We both did. The fog had cleared. Then Sunday brought a letter. It was her official response, through her lawyer. She wanted joint custody. 50-50. 1 week on, 1 week off. It would have been funny if it wasn't so sad. But I did not laugh. Because I knew this was not about motherhood. It was about power. It was about punishing me for not letting her leave without consequences. She thought I would fold. She thought I would break. But she forgot something. I do not lose to liars anymore. Not even the ones I used to love. The morning of the court hearing, I stood in front of my mirror, fixing a tie I had not worn since the day we buried my dad. I did not wear it for her. I wore it for my son. To show him that even when life gets ugly, there is still strength in standing tall. Caleb wasn't with me. I made sure of that. He was at my sister's place, probably glued to the television, controller in hand, battling it out on some video game. I hoped he wasn't thinking too much about what his mom and dad were dragging through court that day. My lawyer met me at the courthouse. Same calm energy he always had. He could be staring at a 5-alarm fire and not flinch. I respected that about him. "She'll probably try to play the victim," he said as we walked in. "There'll be tears. Regret. The whole act. Let her do it. You just stick to the truth. Let the evidence speak." Ashley showed up 10 minutes later. She was dressed like she was going to church, not court. White blouse, hair tied back, barely any makeup, trying to play the grieving wife abandoned by her cruel husband. But Derek wasn't by her side. Not anymore. I figured their love story fizzled out once his own dirty secrets came to light. Good. Let her feel what betrayal tastes like from the other side. The hearing kicked off as expected, standard introductions, a quick rundown of background. Then her lawyer stood up and launched into this fantasy. Said she'd been emotionally neglected for years. That she tried to salvage the marriage but was ignored. Claimed she made one mistake, and only after I supposedly shut her out completely. And now? She just wanted to rebuild her bond with her son, the one I had kept her from unfairly. Unfairly. That word nearly made me laugh right there in court. My lawyer stood and approached the bench with the confidence of a man who knew he held a loaded deck. Because he did. He had it all: text messages, hotel receipts, calendar entries, even recordings of video calls where Caleb cried because she had bailed on him again and again. Missed visits. Broken promises. All documented. All time-stamped. Her own words, in black and white. The folder he placed in front of the judge told a story no performance could outshine. The judge read through the stack silently, page by page. Then he looked up at me. And in his eyes, I didn't see pity. I saw clarity. Then Ashley took the stand. And that was when the show really started. Tears in her eyes, voice all shaky, she slipped into that same routine she always used when she wanted to dodge the consequences of her actions. The helpless victim. The misunderstood wife. The fragile mother. "I just want my family back," she said, her voice cracking perfectly on cue. "I never meant to hurt anyone. Derek, it wasn't what it looked like. I was lost. I felt invisible. Ryan, he just didn't see me anymore." She looked at me as if I was supposed to nod in sympathy, as if I owed her some kind of understanding. I didn't move an inch. Then it was my turn. I didn't cry. I didn't put on a show. I stood up and told the truth. I told the court I loved that woman. Gave her my heart, my trust, my everything. And she didn't just leave. No, she blew up our lives like it was nothing. She moved another man and his kids into the house we built, introduced them to my son like we were disposable. And when that little fantasy of hers came crashing down, she tried to come crawling back, playing the victim, rewriting the story. I paused for a second, then added, "But this isn't about me. This is about Caleb. All that boy wants is peace." The silence that followed in that courtroom, it was heavier than any shouting match we'd ever had. 3 days later, the judge gave his decision. I was awarded primary custody. Visitation for her, every other weekend. supervised, and only if a child therapist gave the green light that Caleb was ready for it. If she slipped up once, her rights would be frozen immediately. She didn't cry when the judge said it. Her face hardened, jaw clenched tight. Her eyes jumped from the judge to me like someone had just pulled off a con, and she was the one who got played. Like justice had cheated on her, too. Outside, in the parking lot, she stormed up behind me. "You think this is finished?" she hissed. "You embarrassed me in there." "No," I said, calm as ever. "You did that to yourself. I just stopped covering for you." She leaned in close, voice syrupy and cold. "You'll regret this. He's still my son." I didn't flinch. "You had a son, and you lost him the moment you chose a stranger over your own family." She didn't reply, just spun around and walked away. And for the first time since all this began, I felt something I hadn't in months: freedom. No, it didn't fix everything. It didn't wipe away the damage. But it was a start. That evening, I picked up Caleb from my sister's place. We drove home mostly in silence, until he looked over and asked, "Did we win?" I smiled. We didn't lose. And for now, that was enough. The weeks that followed felt different. Not lighter, not exactly easier, but they were real. There were no more fake apologies, no more midnight messages full of guilt and manipulation. No surprise visits with smeared mascara and crocodile tears. She began to fade from our daily life, bit by bit. And in her absence, something else took root. Peace. Caleb started smiling more, eating better, sleeping deeper. The dark circles under his eyes started to fade. The kid who used to tense up at the sound of the doorbell now hummed while brushing his teeth. That right there? That was victory, not some legal document. That. She still tried to reach out. Called a few times. Left voicemails that bounced between sad and spiteful. "I miss him. Ryan, you don't have to be so heartless. You turned him against me. You're disgusting." Then, back again. "Maybe we can talk, start over." I blocked her. Let her scream into the void where she belonged. About 2 months after the hearing, Caleb walked into the living room holding a photo album. The old leather one Ashley had insisted we make when he was born. I hadn't opened that thing in years. He sat down beside me and flipped through the pages. "Do you think she ever looks at these?" he asked. I took a second before answering. "Yeah," I said. "I think she does. And I think when she does, she remembers exactly what she lost." He nodded. Then he pointed at a photo of me holding him at the hospital, my eyes red, but smiling. Ashley was next to me in that picture, glowing like she had the whole world in her hands. "She used to be good," he whispered. "People change," I told him. "Sometimes for the better. Sometimes into someone you don't even recognize." He looked up at me. "I'm glad you didn't change." I smiled, ruffled his hair. "I did, buddy. I just didn't break." That weekend, I took him hiking. Just us. No phones. No distractions. Just the rhythm of boots on dirt and wind whistling through the trees. He asked me about the future. About driving, college, maybe getting a dog. We planned everything. We didn't mention her once. And in that silence, I found the closure I didn't think I'd ever get. Because closure doesn't always come in the form of an apology. Sometimes it's just a quiet morning. A shared breakfast. A home without shouting. A boy who finally feels safe again. She thought that bringing Derek and his boys into our home would destroy us. She thought she could break me. But what she actually gave me, without meaning to, was clarity. A clean slate. And the chance to show my son what real love looks like. Steady. Honest. Unshakable. So if you're reading this, and you're stuck in the ruins like I once was, wondering how it all burned down, hear me loud and clear. You're not broken. You're becoming. Let her walk away. Let the lies fall apart. And when she comes crawling back, with tears in her eyes and regret tangled in her voice, smile. Because by then, you'll finally understand. She didn't walk away from something broken. She walked away from the best thing that ever happened to her. And you? You'll finally be free.